Welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahara Rose DeVore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today we have a really special guest. We have Luisana Colmenares. Lou was born and raised in Venezuela as a Latina traveler, a podcaster, she's a speaker, and a psychology student. She's the creator of the Solo Female Traveler podcast, a show that has reached more than 80 countries and has empowered hundreds of women to step outside of their comfort zone to explore the world. Lou, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yes, Sahara, thank you so much for the invitation and for having me as well.
Yeah. Lou, I don't remember exactly how we met, but I know that you were a speaker at our Women Thrive Through Travel Master Fund event years ago. I think maybe it was our first one that you were a speaker on. Was it in 2020? And it's crazy to think about that because we have our next event, our next Women Thrive Through Travel happening this coming May. So time just goes by so fast.
It does. I know. Actually, before that, you were a guest on my podcast on one of the very first episodes. And I remember being so intimidated by you that I was so nervous, and you just came and shared a lot of great info with us. And
yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Of course. No, it was a great conversation. I loved having that, doing that episode with you. But now you're just a podcast pro. I'm seeing you pump out all these episodes, which we'll share more about your podcast. But before we dive into that, where did your love of travel stem from, if you want to tell our audience?
Yeah, so it came from TV, actually. None of my family, they don't like to travel. Most of them have never left the country. And I just remember there was this show about a woman that will visit remote areas in Venezuela. And I just dream about doing that one day. And I haven't traveled in Venezuela as much as I wish because I emigrated. But I am just in this quest of exploring remote parts of the world.
I love that. And are you still based in Chicago?
I am, yes.
I love that. I know I don't remember if you were there while I was there, but I was in Chicago for about 7 years. But it's been a while since I've been there, but we're definitely going to have to do a Chicago TCN meetup so we can finally meet in person. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I love that you were saying that, that I've heard that often from people where their inspiration came from. Either they'll say books or TV and movies. And I know for myself, like I didn't come from a family that traveled much either. But I remember always having this like fascination with Costa Rica because I would see pictures and in movies of like the tropical birds and the rainforest and the greenery. So that was always my very first like warm place I went to was in Central America, was Costa Rica. So it's really interesting how inspiring and influential TV and books can be. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in social media and TikTok and stuff now too.
Oh, yeah. Everything evolves, Back then when we were little, TV was the main thing. Right now it is our phones and social media. And it's funny how you said that you wanted to go see the rainforest and these animals. I am from a part of the world that has that nature. And for me also, it was to go to a place to see the snow. And I thought snow was like shaving cream until I came here. It's like, okay, no, it's completely different.
Yeah, especially if you're living in Chicago. I'm not too far from you right now. I'm in my hometown of Milwaukee, and we have obviously very similar climate. Chicago tends to get a bit worse of snow and weather than we do here, but I've definitely been around in the Chicago winter. So I'm not sure if you're still happy that you came to the snow, but
I like the seasons. Coming from a country that doesn't have seasons is to me is a blessing to have. Just I'm depressed most of the winter, but then when spring comes, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I just feel that I was born again, and just going through the seasons is amazing to me.
Yeah, I used to live in Arizona, and it's very hot there, and we in wintertime, Christmas time, it would be tropical hot weather at the pool, and I'm like, I need some diversity in the seasons coming from the Midwest. So I love that. Throughout your travels, you've traveled quite a bit. Is there a place that really made an impact on you, or really provided some sort of transformation in your life, or an aha moment of something?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I have to say this, that each place is special and each place makes an impact on you. But I have this very, very special country in in my heart, which is Vietnam. And Vietnam by itself is an amazing country. Everything is so different from the West, from what they eat, how they behave, and the language, of course, and just the cultural norms. But it wasn't only the country I went to, which was Vietnam, but it was also the moment in my life when I visited that country. I went there right after my divorce. So I was married for some years. So I divorced and went straight to Vietnam. So it was very transformative in the way that I was able to, I would like to say like heal faster, because I took myself away from what I knew at the moment, which was like this pain, like the end of this relationship and the pain I was going through. So I just went there. Everything was different. I was more curious about the food, about the culture, and that kind of like helped me overcome what I was going through. Let's say just faster, but yeah.
Yeah, it's I've heard Vietnam sticks out to a lot of people. I often get that answer, which I've been there, and it really truly is a unique experience to see the ways of life there, and it's very there's just a lot to experience in that country. But what about travel do you feel really helped you? And when you put yourself, because there are many divorced women or women who have this big change in their life, who turn to travel. And last year in the Travel Coach Network, we had a organization that was focused on divorced or not divorced, widowed women, and they reached out to us. And so I brought a travel coach in who has that experience to empower the women to get out and travel more. But what do you think it is about travel that can help someone who's has those sort of feelings or struggles that they're going through, like you had?
I like to use the analogy of Google Maps. You know that you have your phone, you have the GPS, and then sometimes you can zoom in and you can zoom out. What I see about travel is when you're traveling, you can zoom out into your life and have a more distant, a different perspective of what is going on. Sometimes we get so caught up into our everyday problems that we just think that everything is about us and that everything is happening to us, and we kind of like tend to have some of a victim mentality. I know this sounds kind of harsh, but at least from my experience, when we're traveling, yes, we zoom out, we remove ourselves from our everyday routine, and we're like, okay, maybe there are some changes I can do here or there. And also we can get exposed to different way of living, different cultures, and different situations as well, that it kind of like take the focus so much on us, and we can be like, okay, no, there are like other things happening in the world, and maybe my problems are not the worst problems that are happening out there. So at least that has been the experience for me.
Yeah, and travel itself, I know for me, when I started traveling after I
Mhm.
left Chicago, and I was in a place where I was struggling with depression and anxiety, and I was just like lost at 22 years old of what do I want out of life? Like, what does happiness look like to me? And so travel has always been a very deep personal growth journey for me. Can you say the same for yourself?
Oh, definitely, for sure. I was feeling very lost too when I was 22, and that's when I immigrated to the United States, and that kind of like gave me a white canvas to, to be like, okay, this is how I want my life to look like. And then it's all cycles, just like how we were talking about the seasons. We all have seasons in our life as well, and And I've gone through those seasons where I feel super lost. The second time was when I went to Vietnam, and then actually I traveled around Southeast Asia for 2 months. And when I was there feeling very lost and sad, I found myself again through all the experiences I had in these different countries and the people I met. And that was actually, that trip was actually the one that gave me the idea for the Solo Female Traveler podcast. So over there, yeah, I found an idea, and that gave me a sense of direction that is the one I am putting into action right now. But I don't know, maybe in 5 years I will be lost again, and then I'll take another trip to get exposed to different experiences and get new ideas and perspective.
Yeah, travel really is a powerful tool to help us gain inspiration, gain clarity, and also creativity. There's a lot of research as a wellness travel coach. When I was building my travel coaching and consulting business in the wellness space, I came across so many pieces of research and evidence of how travel, sparks creativity and innovation, which is, very good, obviously, in someone's professional life too. But that could apply to even just leisure travelers, getting inspired, like you got inspired for your podcast. I mean, I know I was inspired went through travel for writing my book, my very first book, that came from my blog. But that's always it's easy for us avid travelers to be like, to understand how deep like travel can be and how powerful travel can be. And I think that something in the tourism industry, and something that I work towards trying to do, is help travel professionals, travel coaches, travel companies, tourism companies, like get that message across to the average traveler who doesn't go backpacking for 3 months or anything, because not everyone can do that. But to be able to show just how impactful travel can be. Even one trip can be that transformative on someone. And I know that's something you talk about with your guests on your podcast, other solo female travelers. And tell us more about what inspired you to go from the solo traveler yourself to now empowering others to become solo travelers and to travel more too.
Yeah, of course. And I was just thinking about what you said. Sorry, I'm deviating from the question.
No, that's okay.
And it's just that also it's so important that there are like so many things that we avid travelers, we know like travel is great, travel is fantastic, but we can never put it into words. And I have been reading some of those studies myself about how travel sparks creativity. And it's just the fact that being able to relax and being able like let our brain not to create so much cortisol, and then also the fact that you're exposing yourself to different situations, environments, and language makes some neural brain cells in your brain spark, and that allows to all this creativity to flow. So this is something that I at least that I see in the American society, where not too many people take too much time off, but it will be so beneficial if they did, and if they travel with the intention to recharge and to find that creativity again.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. And that's what I preach to companies all the time. I love it. I absolutely love the articles that you write. So yes. And going back to your question, so this idea for the podcast, it happened actually when I was in Southeast Asia. I was traveling, as I mentioned, there for 2 months, and I just realized that most of the time I was the only woman from the American continent traveling alone. I saw a lot of European women, and I saw a lot of Argentinians that went there and traveled as a group around Southeast Asia. But I never saw a woman from the United States or a Latina traveler alone. And I was like, what is going on here? What am I the only one? I know I am adventurous, but I don't think I am the only one. And that when I came back and the pandemic started, I had the time to reflect on this and to create the podcast. And it was like, okay, maybe
maybe it's just because there are not enough resources out there, or maybe it's because there is not someone doesn't have a role model right now. As we mentioned at the very beginning, my inspiration was TV, yours as well, or some book, or now it's social media. But what about listening to someone that actually did it, went there and can speak from experience? So that's where the idea came.
As you you dove more into solo female travel, what are some limiting beliefs that you think that holds certain types of people back from taking a solo trip?
I will say the first one is the unknown, that just don't know, not knowing what is on the other side. A lot of that's one. Another one that I have heard a lot about is the financial part. You know, that, oh, I wish I could do it, but I just don't have the money to do so. Another one, of course, is anxiety and fear, which comes from not knowing what is on the other side. So those are the most common ones. Oh, and the fear of being alone. So those will be the top three ones that I've always hear about.
Yeah, I those are ones that I hear often too, especially like the money. But I also hear, I think a lot of it too is the noise of the media and or friends and family who talk about a place being so unsafe or the
Mm.
world being so unsafe. And obviously, as women, we already have in our hometowns, our home cities, to heighten our awareness of our surroundings and our protection and everything too. So, as a woman, to be like, well, what is that going to look like in a whole nother part of the world, a whole nother country where maybe also I don't speak the language and no one knows me and I don't know where I could go or anything too. So I can understand. But what are some tips or some advice that you would give women who have some of these limiting beliefs, considering going on a solo trip?
Right. Okay. So the first one is the fear, and you mentioned about the news, and the first tip is not to watch the news, because you don't want to be feeding your mind with all that negativity. And if you believe everything that is on the news, you wouldn't leave your home. We both live in the United States, and the United States is ranked amongst one of the unsafest countries in the world. But we all live here, and if you look to other different countries, they don't rank as high. So also, it's traveling, especially solo traveling, is like a muscle. You have to start small. It's not like you are going to lift 200 pounds the first time, but you start small. So the same with solo travel. Go somewhere where you feel comfortable. Go somewhere where everyone speaks the same language as you do. And then also, for the financial part, it's all about priorities. And it's also about looking where your money is going, because most of the time, most of us just spend money on things that we shouldn't be spending. So maybe believe me, maybe if you save $50 a week in a year, you could book yourself at least an airplane ticket with that, and even more. So, and I think, was there another part of the question that I missed? I don't.
No, you're good. Those are great tips, especially the budget one. Do you have any favorite budget tips or hacks that you like, or are there certain resources you like?
Yeah, so something that I do, this is called the money jar system management. It's the one that works best for me. So you divide your money by percentages. So each time I get a paycheck or a set amount of money, I divide it by percentages. So I usually use 10 to 20% on travel. And I just put that aside in a different bank account so I don't see it. And then I'm like, okay, I usually use 50% for my necessities. So it's like, oh, this is left, this 50% is left, and this has to last me for whatever X amount of time, 2 weeks usually. And I just leave it there. And then the other ones, since they are in different bank accounts, I don't look at them. So I just pretend that it doesn't exist. And then when the time for me to travel comes, I have this money here, and I don't have to worry about using credit cards or being operating for a scarcity mindset of, oh no, I don't have money and I can go. So that one works best for me.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Southeast Asia, and I always gravitated towards back to Southeast Asia for the fact that it is so affordable to
Yeah.
travel around there and to live. Obviously, depending on where you're coming from, the ticket there, I always say that the one of the most expensive things you're going to pay for on a trip is probably the ticket to the destination. And I always like to recommend people traveling like the furthest away and then working their way back towards their closer to their countries so that's a bit cheaper to eventually get back home. It's always like a little trick that I did. But there's I what I was gonna say when you were explaining the money jars, which I really like, I've heard different types of versions of that. I it makes me think that it's just a mindset shift that people need to make because as we know, self-care is on the rise and people put money towards what makes them happy, whether it's, they're getting their nails done for the month or whatever it might be. You have to also look at travel as your bucket of self-care and happiness too. And whether that is for a solo trip, whether it's for your family, or just you and your partner and you get time off from your kids and whatever it might be, all of this is also important. So shifting your mindset around all of that versus sitting there and saying, I can't go, I'm too busy, my family, I have too much going on, my husband's working or my job doesn't let me go. Really, I'm a big fan of saying you can sculpt your ideal life because you really can. You're the decision maker of your actions every day, your decisions every day, and everything too. And I know there's a lot of things, responsibilities people have, but it really is. And I think you and I are two, and a lot of all the people who are on your podcast and a lot of the guests I have on here are examples of how you can do that because you come from a country like Venezuela, one of the poorest countries in the world where there's so much going on and it's, you didn't have a strong visa to begin with, but you created this life for yourself too. So I think it also has that, it's that empowerment and that courage. And I love that you do that you talk about a lot of that in your podcast, that empowerment behind just going on that trip, right?
Yeah, no, it does. And something to mention about what you just said, because you are so busy, is because you need to take time away. Like we always find these excuses, like, yeah, my family, my job, my this and that. But it's like it's easier to pour from a cup that is full than from a cup that is empty. All the time I see something also that I have to mention is a cultural difference that I notice within the US is that here being busy is a meaning of a status. It's kind of like you feel more important the busier you are. And I kind of feel that leisure is a luxury that we all should have more access to. And just if you have a family, take a time. Everyone needs a break. Everyone needs to be alone once in a while. And again, you don't have to go to Southeast Asia to have this time. You can just go a day to somewhere. For example, I am very busy with the podcast work. Studying. I'm going to university right now, and the other day I was falling into the trap like, oh, I'm so busy, and I was starting to feel overwhelmed and burnt out, and I just went to Starved Rock, which is like an hour and a half away, for the day, and I felt so good after work. And even today I'm taking a day off, but I'm talking to you, but this doesn't feel like work, and I'm just recharging my battery to have energy for the next weeks. And we all need to do that. I always see these moms that are just like so tired, they don't have energy, and I always see people are burnt out from their work, and it's like, okay, no, just recharge, and you can give your best because you're not doing it right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also has to do with the feeling of guilt, especially as women. if you're a mom, if you work for a job and there's either a team you manage or people who look to you for responsibility or productivity, that we feel guilty, where we feel guilty spending time, either alone or doing something for ourselves, or not completing all the tasks on our to-do list, or feeling guilty of asking a family member to watch our child so we can go do something for the day, or just taking your time off. I know I've been guilty of that too, running two businesses. I'm like, I should not be doing something today. I have so
Yeah.
much to do. But then I remember it's like everything is going to be okay, and it's all worth it. And that's why I like to, now that I run my businesses and I have freedom and flexibility, I'm like, well, what makes me happy? I'm like, sunshine on my skin. Where can I go where I can still do work, but I can be in the sun and take breaks in between, laying out, going to the beach, walking around town, and then going back to my work. It's a whole different mindset shift versus on the grind every day in the same routine, the same location. I think that's also a big positive that we're seeing in travel and remote work too.
Yeah, no, for sure. You see, and it's not that complicated. You can, if you want sunshine on your skin, you can just go to your backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just bought a house, so I have like this area that I'm setting up where I can be outside, my dog can be outside. Like it's those little small decisions that you make too. So of course, we're not saying you have to travel as often as you can, everywhere you can, because that's not ideal for everyone. And it's also not doable for everyone or desirable for everyone. I totally understand it. I'm in a different mindset now versus when I was that aimless budget backpacker for 10 years traveling around the globe. And we all have different phases in our life, like you said, different seasons. But it's finding those small little shifts to whether you're going on a trip or how can you incorporate these different elements, I call them elements of travel, into your everyday life.
That's for
But
sure.
if
I'm glad
you
you
go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say that I'm glad you touched on that of the phases in your life, because yeah, we talk about travel, but yeah, you don't have to go backpacking for a whole year to get those benefits. And I'm also in a different phase in my life, and also in a long committed relationship right now, and I don't feel the need or the urge to travel once a month. I'm doing it now twice a year.
Yeah. And like you said too, there's so much domestic travel. Travel does not mean you have to get on a plane and go abroad. You don't have to go to another country. Every even city, exploring your own hometown city for the day could be an adventure as well too. Travel comes in so many different forms and definitions as well.
For
But
sure.
um, besides travel, you actually have a really good following on social media, on Instagram. And I know that the listeners of this podcast, many also have podcasts, or obviously they're travel coaches or travel agents or business owners, alongside travelers who are bloggers and want to just showcase their content. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how to show up authentically and also how to grow their audience on a platform like Instagram?
Sure. Yeah. The big following, it depends who you compare me to, but yes, I have been able to create a really nice community and create engagement. So I think the first tip I have to, either if you have a podcast, a blog, or just your Instagram account, is to be consistent. Consistency pays. Something, for example, that I see with many podcasters is that they create a season, and then after 3-6 months they don't get consistent downloads, and then they quit. For example, in my case, it took me about 1.5 years to get consistent downloads, and this community that I'm growing right now, it started growing not too long ago, but I was being consistent all the time. Also, get clear on what it is that you are doing and what you're doing it, because it's very easy to get caught up on little things, but then when you're clear on what you want to share, first, I don't know why, but you find the energy to do everything, and then second, it gets easier to create content around that instead, and then you create content for just one thing instead of like 100 things. We're in a time where our attention span is getting shorter, so people really wants to hear and see things that are specialize in just one area. Also, for Instagram, something that I have learned besides consistency is keeping in mind why you're creating this community. It ties back to the last thing I said. And also, something I've been seeing lately with a lot of travel bloggers is that they create content for themselves and about themselves. So also keep in mind when you are creating content is like, what's in it for the people that is looking at this, reading this, or listening to this? Because it's nice if you share your story, but is there a lesson behind that, or you're just sharing it because you want to show how cool you are? So it's like, it's important to distinguish between those two. Also for Instagram and for your podcast cover or for your blog, aesthetics are important. I know authenticity is very important too, but then, for example, Instagram is a platform that values aesthetics. So that's something you have to deal with. And if you are posting a photo, maybe edit it in a way where it will look brighter or look better. And then if you're making reels, just make sure, that you look good and that the space where you're recording is not messy. Those are like little things. And also, let me see. And also, one thing is the amount of followers that you have, and another one is the community you are creating. There's a big difference. The following is just a number, but the community is the one that can give you revenue later on, or are the ones where you build trust so much that then you can offer something to them later on.
Yeah, that I couldn't agree more with that. And that's why I said you have a good following on Instagram. And you said, well, it depends on who you compare me to. There are people with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, and I would take a smaller audience over that any day, because just because there's a follow count, and this is always something that's kind of irked me, is people just want the numbers. I want the number, follow me, follow me, follow me. But if from a strategy standpoint for your business, if it doesn't matter if that person likes or follows you, what matters is, will they ultimately opt into something that you're going to sell? Are they going to talk about you positively to someone else who's also going to learn about you or follow you? And that's how you build your brand. You build loyalty, you build, this sense of community. And so I've never been a numbers person. And there's also people with tens and hundreds of thousands of followers who don't monetize at all because they haven't been doing anything other than just trying to grow their number, unless there's a specific, the influencer industry, which is a whole nother conversation, is why they want the big numbers, because then they can just say the number to the company if they're trying to get a sponsorship or something. I get that if that's the route you're trying to go. But if you're trying to grow a brand and a business and stand out and, actually set yourself apart from what others are doing and build a loyal brand, you want to be more mindful about how you go about it, how you put yourself out there, what content. So those tips are right on that you said. But as we wrap it up here, I always love to ask, is there a fun fact about yourself? It doesn't have to be business or travel related that you can share.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this one, and I guess a fun fact about me is that I am very scared of heights, and I'm just scared of everything in general. So
that for everything.
Yes.
So I know our listeners are going to want to know, then how do you have the courage to travel then?
That's the thing. I'm always like, okay, if I always do the pros and cons. Like, for example, I've done skydiving twice. When I was in the airplane about to jump, I was telling everyone to take my money, that I wasn't going to jump, that just please just unbuckle me. But then I did it anyways. And I always do it thinking about, okay, how is it that I'm going to feel after? So it's about that sense of empowerment, that I know that if I get over this, then I can overcome whatever comes next into my life. I was shaking the first time I took my first solo trip, and I was shaking when I started learning English, and when I landed in New York and I didn't even know how to communicate properly. But I did it anyways, and because I did it, that has taken me to where I am right now. So I guess that's a fun fact about me. I have few people that can say, okay, like, yeah, she's like that.
Yeah, I am terrified of heights. I can't even look at a picture or video or anything of someone like a cliff or anything high. This is a weird thing. My toes tingle like instantly. Like it's weird. It's as if I'm standing there myself. But yeah, it's strange. But tell our listeners how they can listen to your podcast, how they can follow you, where they can find you and learn more about what you're doing.
Of course, yeah. You can listen to the podcast in all platforms. Its name is the Solo Female Travel Podcast, and you can find me on Instagram with the same name. And that's all. Those are the only places I am on the internet right now.
Perfect. Well, Lou, gracias por estar aquí.
Ah.
And I'm so glad to have you. You're such a light, and I just love seeing all your content. And if you guys don't follow her, go ahead and follow her, because listen to those episodes. They really are empowering and so inspiring. All of the links for Lou are going to be in the show notes. And if you know of anyone who might be interested in listening to our podcast, we look forward to also having you in our TCN Facebook global community. The links for that and your free beginner's guide are also in the show notes. You'll find everything there. And if you know anyone who might be interested, send them our way. Come give us a hello. And we really truly appreciate all of you guys. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.